Thank you. Ms. Hamilton? Here. Mr. Malvagano?
Here.
Mr. Cantella?
Here.
Ms. Kaczynski? Here. Mr. Del Tufo?
Here.
Mr. Arcudi? Here. Mr. Smith?
Here.
Dr. Marquesi?
Here.
Ms. Tangora? Here. Mr. Tejero?
Here.
Mr. Tucci? Mayor Scarpelli?
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Marquesi, would you please sit for Mrs. Kaczynski? And Mr. Cantella, would you please sit for Mr. Arcudi? Please take notice the quorum of the governing body may be present at the regularly scheduled planning board meeting of Wednesday, March 15, 2023 at 7 p.m. And please take notice the quorum of the zoning board of adjustment may be present at the regularly scheduled planning board meeting of Wednesday, March 15, 2023 at 7 p.m. And please take notice the quorum of the Board of Education may be present at the regularly scheduled planning board meeting of Wednesday, March 15, 2023 at 7 p.m. And please take notice that in addition to the regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board, a joint meeting of the planning board, zoning board of adjustment, the Board of Education, and the governing body will take place immediately following the regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board to review and discuss land use and other issues affecting the township of Nutley as related to the zoning board of adjustment and planning board. Please take notice that formal action may be taken, and please take further notice. The meeting will be held at 44 Park Avenue, room 300, Nutley, New Jersey, 07110, and D is thank you. That's well. If you've all had a chance to review the minutes of the previous meeting, I'll entertain a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Kadir, communications and or bills?
I have one bill for approval this evening. It's a bill from Ms. Santasieri for her attendance at preparations of the minutes for February 15, 2023, which was just approved. It's in the amount of $150. I find it to be fair and reasonable.
Is there a motion to pay? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Opposed? Thank you. There are no other applications to be heard this evening. I think we can get right on with our new business, which is our combined meeting. I must say that I don't think any other town does this, and I think that it is such a useful thing. I would like to call that portion of the meeting to order, and what I would like to do is have everyone starting to my right, just introduce him or herself.
Hi, everybody. Tom Delia, board trustee.
Hi, everybody, Terry Quirk.
Nick Scotty, board of trustee. David DePisa, assistant superintendent of business. South Ferraro.
Patricia Doherty, zoning board.
About Wallace zoning board.
Zoning board.
Dave Redmond, zoning board. Greg Tolby, zoning board.
John Cavone, zoning board.
Anna McGovern, zoning board attorney.
Frank Preziano, zoning board chair.
Carol Tempora, planning board chair.
Eric Kazira, planning board attorney.
Frank Cantella, planning board.
Linda Hamilton, planning board.
Walt Smith, planning board.
Larry Marquesi, planning board.
Anthony Malpatano, planning board.
Jerry Del Tufo, planning board.
Joe Scarpelli.
Al Petracco.
Jonathan Bruno, township attorney.
Tom Evans.
Danny Pettis, municipal clerk.
Thank
Don
you.
Kelly, I'm on Zoom.
Oh, great, thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Dave Berry, code official.
Thank you,
Carl Tennell's here, our building inspector.
thank you. Mr. Graziano, report.
Mayor, commissioners, members of the planning board, members of the Board of Education, and excuse me, those department. The zoning board has been very busy this year. As you can see, we reviewed 63 cases as compared to 59 in 2021. Of those 63 cases, 29 were granted as requested, but the overwhelming majority of cases were granted with conditions. Our meeting went over to the meeting, and the board members worked to make sure that every application was fairly and thoroughly reviewed. We know that last year we reported certain trends that we believe should be reviewed. We understand that the planning board, board commissioners, and the code official are working on a number of those concerns, and we are interested to hear what progress you have made with the following. First, air conditioning condensers in the side yard continue to be a frequent subject of variance application. The current ordinance requires a minimum of 6 feet. The side yard must be unencumbered. We find that many applications presented to us where properties have less than 6 feet on the side, or only reasonable place for the condenser is in the 6-foot setback. We are hopeful that a formula can be worked out to allow for installation of units within less than 6 feet by permit only, without the need for a variance. Next, drainage concerns are an issue with all new construction, and we are seeing it come up with variances for driveway widenings and other applications where impervious coverage is cited. We know that 1 or 2 family homes are not subject to site plan review, but we also know that some additions can cause drainage issues, and perhaps some study into minimum drainage requirements for all new construction additions should be reviewed, such as requiring stormwater retention systems if an addition creates a certain percentage of impervious coverage, regardless of whether the addition would be within the allowable total lot coverage. Also, when we get applications for new apartments or mixed-use buildings, and we do a site plan review, there are no ordinances that mandate charging stations for electric vehicles. Also, with respect to apartments and mixed-use buildings, the requirements regarding space for garbage and recycling areas appear to be insufficient for the present and growing needs for recycling and refuse generated by the average person. Again, with respect to apartments and mixed-use buildings, we know that more and more people are shopping online. Deliveries are increasing. We recommend that some requirement for delivery parking, loading and unloading be required. We will also add that many mandatory designated visitor parking spaces should be considered. Next, the code definitions of warehouses and truck terminals are still an issue. We recommend that a review of those definitions, along with the new area of concern, commercial vehicles. We had an application that dealt with a commercial vehicle last year, but was withdrawn before any decision could be made. And while we did not have any applications on the subject of fast food next year, we would recommend that the definition also be reviewed. Again, we would request that a review of the ordinance that has to do with curb cuts widths be done. Section that limits curb cut widths to no greater than 20 feet in any zone is part of section 700-94 that is titled additional regulations on off-street parking for 1 and 2 family dwellings. Perhaps the title should be modified so that it's clear 20-foot curb cuts are the limit no matter what the zone. In addition to the concerns we expressed last year, we'd like to make the following observations and suggestions. Township lighting. We recommend that the planning board and commissioners introduce and expand lighting guidelines with special attention to commercial properties and signs that include lighting. One of our board members, I can't take credit for this, has done some research and has provided ordinances from Roseland, Harding Township, and Bloomfield as suggested examples that we will be happy to share with you at a later date. Data centers. We would request that a definition of data centers, co-location facilities, cloud nodes, internet exchanging, disaster recovery, and business continuity sites be developed. Additionally, we would recommend that the planning board examine and specifically clarify if data centers are allowed or prohibited in B1, B4, MO, M1, and M2 zones. And if they are allowed, provide specifications and limits concerning lighting and noise, HVAC pollution limits, water volume intake for parking, traffic, entry, access requirements, increased setbacks and landscape buffers to areas adjoining residential and mixed-use areas, and other specifics. Last, smoke and vape shops. We have noticed a significant increase in the number of smoke shops filling our retail spaces along Franklin Avenue. Like nail salons that have been taking over downtown, perhaps the planning board can make a recommendation. Limit the number of such shops and how to display the merchandise. Such a limitation may help to prevent those shops from enticing children to buy merchandise that is supposed to be for adult only. Welcome any questions that you may have about the matter to be considered by the board as set forth in the report provided to you.
Thank you very much. That's a very conclusive list. Is there anyone who cares to address any of those issues? If not, Dave, I would suggest that, possibly we we schedule a workshop meeting where we can address some of these things that we can get taken care of.
Yeah,
And
I guess just-
simplify things.
I'll sit down, but I'll just mention one point
Sure.
with regards to, I don't need to. With regards to, the master plan that the planning board worked on, and they introduced this past year, or December, I believe. At the rear of the master plan, there was recommendations to the planning board that's in the master plan. And there are about 10 of them. And they are the mechanical equipment, the air conditioning setbacks on the mechanical equipment, or roof over porticos, rear yard fences, corner fences, commercial facade colors, curb cuts. And there's like about 3 or 4 other ones. So in the beginning of the year, I did work with Paul Rickey, our township planner. My commissioner authorized me that it was okay to work with him and go over code language. So I do have ordinance recommendations that I'm ready to submit to either the commissioners or the planning board with, not the whole list, but the list on the back of the master plan, which are some of the simple ones that you were talking about. So I have those ready. All I would have to do is get them from Paul and send them off either to the commissioners or to the planning board for whatever you decide.
Yeah, that would be great. I suggest that we schedule a workshop meeting, sooner rather than later. As soon as we have some time to do that. And if you could send us, what you've drafted and gotten ready.
Yeah, I have ordinance changes actually.
Okay. Then we'll be
They're in
ready to
draft
go.
changes like they've done in the past.
Great, thanks, Dave.
And as far as the workshop, I mean, I'm always available.
Thank you.
Dave, any work that you and Sal did on the smoke and vape shops?
Sal and I have been reviewing a few items that Mr. Chairman recommended. The first item, the stormwater, that's on, I concur with that. The stormwater on residential properties are a difficult subject for us. They're a difficult subject for a lot of residential communities all over northern Jersey that are seeing more and more buildings that are built up. And it's an issue that we face a lot. We're fortunate enough on some of the bigger applications, subdivisions, where we have help from our township engineer, and it's much easier. But on the applications that don't require the site plan approval, we have to use our judgment along with our building inspectors, and we have to come up with ways to ensure that water construction projects could happen. These are large scale projects, and water doesn't run off to adjacent properties. Our ordinance is really clear that you can't have water run off. But there's things that change in the code, like an example would be, I don't know the exact date, but previously in our plumbing code, you were allowed to take a sump pump and run it to the street. There was a code change 3 years ago or so, and now you're prohibited to run it to the street. So for 30 years or 40 years, we were telling people just run it to the street, run it to the street, run it to the street. Now, obviously, the state got smart, and the plumbing inspectors all over are failing this for people. And it's creating an issue because sometimes people have existing drains that go to the curb. Sal has numerous pictures all over the town with unsafe conditions. But look at our town. Look at some of these roads, Beach Street, all these hills, and where do you run your property? So that's a really difficult subject to talk about. We've been going over some ideas. We help people out with, ideas, dry wells and certain for smaller projects. On the larger projects, we're lucky when our township engineer assists. That's the stormwater issue. Sal and I have been looking at some ordinances on these smoke shops and these vape shops. We did pass an ordinance on the nail salons that limits them to 500 feet within each other. We did introduce an ordinance a while back for dollar stores, not to have them within 500 feet of each other. We're starting to see some other ideas that other towns have been, they've been putting them in certain areas, restricting the amount of signage that you could have on them.
Dave, does it restrict how many are allowed in the township and any other towns?
I haven't found anything that restricted the number, just in an area, like you could have, like, permit them in a certain zone.
I have to tell you, it's been the biggest complaint I've been receiving, actually. The sisters by Holy Family on Franklin Avenue, they actually grabbed me.
I would,
Because the people go in there, then they're smoking in front of the,
I agree. Dr. Joe called me last fall or something. It was like 8:30 at night and he, Dave, that guy's lights are still blinking. Carl went there a few times, told the guy, you can't do it, you can't do it. I got in my car, I went over there. I demanded to the guy shut the lights down and he shut them down. They were blinking. Remember he told me they were blinking?
I'm not so concerned about the blinking lights, and I know that's on our books, but what I am concerned about is the kids. And now another one popping up, of course, from where the yellows used to be. So
Well, I mean,
I think we're a little late to the game. I mean, how can we get in front of
I
it?
will tell you, I did a lot of research with this when I had a zoning permit one time. Remember Franklin Framery was there?
Yeah.
I got a zoning permit to put a smoke shop there. It was bothering me so bad. So, I thought so close to the school, there has to be something to prohibit it. There has to be. I called up the police department. I called up the health department. I spoke to our land use attorney, Andy Cifelli, and there's got to be a way that we could, limit a smoke shop right here. My daughter's going to this school. This can't happen. Our town, the definition, retail, you can sell anything. They limit, you can't sell a boat, you can't sell something, but if you look, it pretty much you could sell everything. There's no health issue. The only thing I noticed in some towns, when the health department issues a certain license, I believe they can impose certain conditions, but I'd have to ask the health officer. He obviously know more about this than I, and there's no restriction in the police department.
So Dave, you said the retail ordinance doesn't restrict this, so why don't we restrict it?
I'm sure that we could. I mean, put it as a prohibited use. We would have to,
The one, down on Harrison and Franklin, right? You got Mount Carmel Church on one side, Holy Family and the school on the other, and in the middle of all of this, Sin City, right? Right at the entrance of our town. It's just not, to me, it's unacceptable to have that.
well, one thing I'll tell you, I mean, you should all know, when we were going over this a couple of years ago, when I was speaking to, the health department, they did a survey, and they're selling that stuff all over in gas stations and it's all over. They're doing it. So,
Yeah,
they're doing it as like accessory uses. Now we're seeing it front and center with an actual smoke shop.
Right, so my point is this is an issue that has to be addressed urgently. And I think that the other thing I would point out is the things that are in the reassessment of the master plan, the 10-year review of it has items in it that were in the 2012, master plan that still haven't been addressed. So to me, there needs to be something that actually puts a tickler together that creates a priority that says these things have to get done. So every one of the things that Frank talked about, I think needs to be structured, and there needs to be a timeline that says in the next 90 days, we're going to have something on this to introduce, and that coordinating with the planning board and whoever has to be part of that, I think we have to step up and start to address these things.
Yeah,
Even our short-term rental ordinance.
I have that on here as well.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're starting to see, different uses of the concept of Airbnb, right? Although our ordinance prohibits short-term rentals, we should actually refresh it to make sure we're including things that we can actually point to.
Well, we're starting to see short-term rentals with people renting out their pools. They have these beautiful backyards and they want to rent out a pool, but it happens. So Carl will tell you, he catches them. They bring porta johns there. This is real life. It's in our town. It's happening right now.
Loads of kids coming to our house
Yeah.
on a weekend.
The way that I deny this is that it's a use that's not permitted in our township. And that's historically how the zoning officer denied a use that's not permitted. Airbnbs are not a permitted use. They're not allowed. So I deny it. We send a violation based upon that code language. But I've been told that that language probably should get relooked at, and it should get further strengthened for our code. So if ever get challenged, we have a better position.
So my question is there something that can be established with the planning board to look at the ordinances and start to cycle these things through, in a manner that's most expeditious to address these things, working with Dave. I've told Dave to do whatever you have to do and work with whoever you have to as quickly as you can to make sure these things are getting addressed. But I think we need to really step up our game and get those ordinance recommendations before the Board of Commissioners so we can take action on them.
I agree, Commissioner Evans. I think we're long overdue to have a very meaningful, conference session, to discuss all of these things. If you can come up with a list based on what we've discussed this evening, and Barry, I don't think we have any public hearings coming up. If we could actually set a date, perhaps, and really expedite this.
Well, I think we're going to create a list tonight. So I think we'll already have a list. I'm telling you that through my commissioner, I already have small, simple zoning change that I'm ready, willing, within the next week or so, as long as Paul Ricky could confirm, to send the planning board the draft of the easy zoning changes that we've come up with. Some of these more difficult ones, we're going to need help with council when it comes to just saying we could want to, I don't know if could we just put it on a use that's not permitted in the township? Are we allowed to just write in there, vape shops, smoke shops are not permitted? We're gonna have to do some research that and just see what the law tells us we can do.
Dave, well, at least we could do is look and see if we can license it, right? So,
That I know, I spoke to the health department previously on that.
so if we can license them, we can limit them.
Yeah,
And you put a price on the license and
Yeah, I
you
agree.
could regulate it.
in the ordinances that Sal and I were looking at, the township has licensing requirements on it.
Yeah, so I think that's good, the direction we have to move in.
Yeah,
Even if you change the fee,
yeah,
Right.
that's the,
yeah.
Is there any way to limit where where they display their merchandise? I mean, some of the bongs in the window that little kids can see and don't understand what it is. And I've heard a couple parents say to me, then I have to explain what that is. They don't know what it
I
is.
think we can license them, right? Then we can, similar to like some of the licenses for some of the cannabis
Right.
stores
And
in other towns.
You can limit it.
Opaque windows, and so you're not having
Right.
what
So
looks
it's-
like a head shop.
and who even is there inspections there of what they're selling? Is it legal to sell what they're selling? And do you need a card or who's on that?
I don't know. I would have to ask the health department.
What they're selling.
I would have to ask the health inspector to see.
So, Dave, there's state statutes that basically say it's unlawful to, in effect, add flavorings to a vape, whatever that is, right? Because of the risk of cancer, right? It's a carcinogen. Do we do any inspections to determine whether or not these places are in compliance? I mean,
No, there's no requirement. There's no requirement for that. And unless the health department has some sort of, unless they have a process with nicotine, and I'm not sure about that. We have to ask our health
It's actually a
inspector.
state statute that basically says you can't. So we could turn on that and do, whether that's the health department or something. I think it has to be addressed very quickly with the planning board.
I'm sorry. Was that a question?
I think it's more.
I couldn't hear you very well.
I'm sorry. My point is that there are state statutes that make certain uses of flavorings in vape smoke, whatever, because of the lung cancer and things like that. So if there's a state law that says you can't do it, then we should have something that makes sure that we're ensuring that that's not being done and that the violation associated with that is extremely high.
Tom, do you know who posed that flavoring? Which department of the state?
Not off the top of my head, but I have it and I can actually send it.
If you could send it, that would be helpful. I would assume that they already have, some guidelines for violations.
They might.
If they passed it and they said you can't do it, I would assume they have something that says if you do it, this is what happens.
Yeah, they'd love to do like unfunded mandates.
Well, I get that.
So,
But look, if it's a criminal violation, or municipal violation, then it's up to us to enforce it to the police department.
right,
So it might already be there. I'm not familiar with that one.
yeah, I know. So I think whatever that is, that paperwork has to surface and we have to address it.
The planning board, are we agreeable that perhaps we should schedule our new April meeting? Make it a workshop meeting? Would you be ready by then, Dave?
Next
Yeah.
public meeting, April 12th.
Okay.
It's April 12th.
Is it possible if we come up with a list tonight, that we have some of our legal counsel, I don't know, if help us out with some of these, before we get to the meeting?
Well, if you get the stuff to us, I'll certainly look at it.
Okay, so we know we're gonna look into but we know we're gonna look to vape, smoke shops are at the very top of the list. There's no reason to discuss the items in the master plan, right? The recommendations in the back of the master plan, right?
I think we already know what the issues are.
Yeah, and I already came to the board last November and we talked about that, so I'm gonna get you that in a draft ordinance
That's
form.
fine.
So just to look at that, we could put the smoke shops on the list. You could also put the,
Excuse me.
We could have our ordinance. Discharge of.
stormwater, yeah. Yeah,
That's an ordinance that Dave and I, which.
yeah,
We have it in draft form, that's.
yeah. The Airbnb you could put on that, short-term rentals.
That would be good.
Is there anything else that you want
Do you want what Frank just said?
The list of everything we just mentioned is on here.
Perfect.
Mr. Graziano, I had one question on the data center and where that came up and why that was an issue.
Yes.
One of our board members, Patricia, had made the suggestion to us. We had asked the board members to write in any suggestions that they wanted for us to bring up at the joint meeting here today. There was no application regarding a data center.
I did get calls a while back about an expansion to the other one, or possibly building another building. There's a lot of property back
The
there,
one on River Road?
and it's in a flood area, it's in a floodway, or I don't know what it is, but I know they're working on a concept to build another, either an addition or another data center there, the company that's there.
Yeah, there was one that was an application about a year ago. I think it was on River Road. I think they pulled it. I don't know if that's what gave you the unprompted view.
Combination of that and also it's becoming an area of concern in many communities, not just in New Jersey, but specifically in Virginia, where the data centers are impacted, have significant impact on the environment of the towns. And in terms of services, where they're located in terms of zoning, how big the building is, specifically the decibel level of their HVACs, rooftop ventilation areas, plus water intake and discharge, because they use a lot of water and obviously discharge it for cooling, plus the fact that a lot of them, because they are need to be maintained continuously 24/7. If there's ever a power outage, they're required to have either natural gas or diesel generators, and those are usually outbuildings separate from the data center. And there's a whole host of things that towns need to consider when they're looking at permitting or limiting the size and capacity of a data center or a business security. What they call an iCloud node or something like that.
That last thing you said, Patricia?
A business security continuity center. They're also called cloud nodes. There's a whole bunch of different terminology, and they have different functions. Some of them are just for banking. Some of them are for the Amazon data services like ASW, which I believe the township subscribes to. There's one across the street from Costco in Clifton, and that I think is a banking continuity center, and then there are two down by Delawana that are specifically data centers. And they're different sizes, and it's an area that towns probably should be addressing more specifically.
I told you I couldn't take credit for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah, let me real quick, if you don't mind, indulge me for a second. For those of you who don't have insomnia and haven't yet read the 2002 Master Plan Examination Report, we'll be handing out copies later. But in the end, where in the recommended section that Dave was talking about, all the recommendations are pretty much from prior joint meetings. We listened to you, Frank. So stuff we're working on include, there's only 10 of them, so I'm going to rifle them out, just so you know. We talked about extension into front and rear yard setbacks for building mechanical equipment, the air conditioning units. So we're covering that. Side yard setback for mechanical equipment, specifically generators. Roofs over front stoops. Remember we talked about that a few times. Rear yard fences, corner lot fences, commercial building facade color. Wonder where that came from. Covering of commercial windows, we talked about, especially for police patrols, covering the windows of commercial buildings. We have curb cuts in here, historic preservation, the idea to evaluate the need and opportunities for amendments to that. And the last one was stormwater management. So, we hit all the major food groups, but there's more to do.
I have every one of those items that we don't even really need to, they're part of the ordinance recommendation that I'm going to send. I didn't work on historic preservation part.
Can't do it all.
And I'm not sure about the facade color. I looked into that, which I did do some research, and I'm not sure if we could legally put an ordinance on the books that say you can't have a certain color as a building. If I'm wrong, and if we could do that, feel free, but I did do some research with some of the other ordinances and some of the law, and I feel that we probably can put something on the books that said that, but it doesn't, some towns do. Belleville has something that, you can't have a certain color, but doesn't mean they won't get challenged,
Excuse me, Dave, I hate to backtrack to go back to the smoke shops, but I just had a question. The way we don't allow tattoo shops, can we use that same process to put an ordinance in about the smoke shops, the same way it was done for tattoo parlors?
Try that. And when I researched that, we, obviously we determined that it's a retail use. And if you look up at the definition of a retail use and what a retail use they sell any products. So that's how we had to issue the zoning permit.
Yeah, that's something that we can amend, what our retail use can.
Well, we have a section that says prohibited uses in 739. We would have to add it to prohibited uses. To prohibit that use, that means the towns take a position that they do not want that use in their township. Like truck terminals are in there. Boarding houses are in there. There's several uses that are in there.
So the basic rule is, if you want to stop something, you have to say what it is you want to stop. You can't just wait and say, oh, I want that, just wait. So you have to think ahead. That's what is so challenging about land use. Because there's probably uses right now that you would absolutely hate that are going to come up in the future. But predicting it ahead of time is impossible until you know it's coming. That's why you have to pay attention to trends, what's happening in other communities, what's happening in other cities. If something's happening and you don't like it, do something before it gets here. And that's a real tough thing because sometimes people don't agree. We can go back and forth. Dave mentioned facades and colors and the like. Some people hate the color and some people love the color. And that's one you can't really deal with directly by saying, we'll dictate the color. Unless you have a neighborhood scheme, unless the applicant and the property owners agree to it, it's almost impossible to do. Somebody said to me, how do you get somebody to paint the building the color you want? Pay them. You can say, hey, I want the building to be blue. I'll pay for the blue paint, but it's got to stay blue. You can do that. There's ways of doing that. But that's a different you know, it's a different, it's not really land use, but it is. So you have to think ahead. And I mean, listen, we've got a great group of people here, very smart people, very people committed to nothing. There's no way you're gonna predict every one of these things ahead of time. And so when they come up, they blossom fast and they blossom big. You know, there's a use of the data centers out here. I know about data centers because I know about the one over in Clifton. I had no idea all the stuff that was just mentioned, because there are things that have come up since that building, you know, went up. And there are lots of issues that you have to pay attention to with that in every area. You know, it's the trick. And if you want to prohibit something, you say you can't do it. But you can't make it vague. You know, you can't, because the vagaries have to set aside. So.
Yeah. we have a section.
It's
It
challenging.
says prohibited uses. A mobile home camp, a hotel, a junkyard, a truck terminal, a drive-in restaurant, fast food restaurant, advertising sign, boarding in a rooming house. Raising and keeping the livestock and poultry, which I know somebody that would love to change that.
That poultry, too, I can remember that. But
We can put it out.
yeah, but what
People
I'm-
ask us all the time for chickens. They all ask us all the time.
So, but to David's point, even the uses he identified are subject to question. What does that mean? You know, they're prohibited. What does it mean to prohibit one of those particular uses there? You can't have poultry. That was, I think, pretty clear. Are you allowed to have other animals? I don't know. But
Dave, if it's prohibited even with the drive-throughs, how's Burger King?
They got
that was
use variance.
grandfathered in. That was.
So did the data center. There's a data center down there, which we have all of the above, which they were mentioned. We have that huge generator. We have the natural gas. We have the 24-hour surveillance. It's a wild building down there. Carl will tell you.
In Nutley?
Yeah.
Never road across from,
Yeah,
the old,
a wild place.
yeah, the
Castle
Manor.
Zoning board or something.
Right.
Something they're gonna do there.
I don't think I worked on an actual application. You might have got a call, I believe.
Maybe that's what it was.
They were got called to determine whether or not it would be a use variance application. That's what I think I remember.
Yes.
They have a lot of property down there, a real lot of property.
This
So
one was the paint company.
it's right where the data center is.
That was from Graham Riper House,
Across the street,
right
yeah.
across the street,
On River.
right next to the apartment complex.
Okay.
So the whole point is, if you want to bar something, define what it is you want to bar.
Put it in there.
If you don't do it, it's considered, you know, too vague or available to do. And I listen, there's lots of uses I don't like personally, that, you know, other people think are great and they promote them. They're points of commerce. So it's very, very hard to legislate something that covers all issues. You'll never do it. That's why we're all here, because you'll never be able to do it. You have to work together to come up with that list and put it through. And really, many of the things we've spoken about tonight, the commissioners already have on their plate. It's come from the planning board before. It hasn't been acted upon for a lot of reasons because other things have come up, and you know, whenever you have an issue that you want to act upon, there's always somebody who says, well, wait a second, is this a good idea? Is it going to affect our ability to develop this property or that property? Is it going to affect, you know, the values of properties? And every one of these so-called restrictions, if you want to call them that, they do affect the value of your property. Because as soon as you say you can't do this, well, you can't sell it for that purpose anymore. That's gone. Unless the zoning board gives you the variance. So there's, you know, it's a tension and conflict in the law where good ideas can become tough ideas and are not very easily addressed for everybody. So, and by the way, that's why we have this joint meeting, you know, because this is the only municipality I'm aware of anywhere that puts all the boards together at one meeting and one night. You know, this is the best form of democracy that you can possibly have, because we're all here listening. You know, we don't hear each other a lot of times because we're busy. You know, the Board of Education, I get bits and pieces of what you guys do unless I'm watching a meeting. Or my wife is a teacher and she's telling me what's going on at the Board of Education meetings, then I know. The zoning board, I know because of Diane. I mean, the township commissioners, I know because of John. We actually get together to review what's going on, so we have a kind of awareness. And this meeting brings it all together. And I will say this, it may not seem like it, but every year when we do this, and Dave and I talk, and Carl and others afterwards, we do make progress to taking items off the list. Maybe we're not getting 25 done because it's impossible. We pick the best ones that we can get done, or the ones that are low hanging fruit, as I say, because we want to get something accomplished. And Dave heard me say this before. So we will be doing that. It makes a lot of sense. And, I actually like these meetings because Tom told me about something I was unaware of. Once again, he's a smart guy and he's always got access to information. I don't know where he gets it from, but he's got it. So this flavoring thing.
I read a lot. I don't have friends.
Maybe it's a flavoring thing is something that we could play on. I kind of like it. So it hit me that it would. I would appreciate it.
We'll have it tomorrow.
I have a question for the
Yes,
chairman.
Dave, go ahead.
The township lighting, is it more signage related or is it more like parking lot, like building related? Is it all-
Township parking lot, I think what that stemmed from was, one of the gas stations came before us. They wanted to have it was a green sign, green numbers.
Oh, yeah.
We told them they couldn't have green numbers, and we went to a clear number,
Yeah,
which is too close to a traffic light.
yeah,
And we found that the new LED lighting,
yeah.
the numbers are very, very bright.
Okay, well, the township does have an ordinance, and a site plan ordinance, and the township engineer, we work really, with the site plans. And there's a certain element of light that's allowed to spill off the property line. And, I don't really see, I do see more problems with signage, brightness of signage than parking lot signs, because our township engineer looks at that on the site plan rather well.
So that's a good point. The new lighting is new technology, and you have to react to the new technology, but it comes on so fast. You
Some
don't
of
have
those
a
put balloons and things like that,
But it happens so fast, you can't react. No, you're gonna react.
Okay, so it's more signage related.
yeah, things like that.
Right, signage related.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially, yeah,
Go back to
signs,
the
things like
booth
that.
light instead of a neon or LED type of light, I think that would improve many things, just not the way it looks, but it's
Yeah.
really bright.
Okay,
Okay, so, April 12th, we'll be having a discussion. And we can expect to receive some material prior to that time.
yes.
Thank you so much.
Just one thing, I just want to mention to everybody, the trouble that code department's been having with the resales of, the properties, basically, we all know the market is going down a little bit now. We've had a crazy market the past couple of years. And, the struggles that Carl and I have with these resales, with these, properties, the basement apartments, the attic apartments, the extra kitchens, the extra bathroom, it's a very difficult problem that we have.
Every day.
We don't even tell the boss about it because we don't want to break, bother them, but it's every day. We're constantly getting calls. Our township attorneys get calls, our zoning board attorney gets calls. Carl's making me rip this out. Dave's making me take that out. Frank's making me take a pool
We're
down.
losing sales because it's
And
actually a 2-family and they have it as a 4-family.
it's really, really, really difficult. All these old kitchens that you have in a basement, you're allowed, if you have a kitchen legally, you're allowed to redo it. Now, our ordinance allows you to put a kitchen in your basement. Our ordinance allows you to put things in your basement. So, the fact that our ordinance is rather loose with what you can do in a basement, 20, 30 years ago, you're making a kitchen, you're making a bathroom. Well, they make bedrooms in there. And people want to live together nowadays, as much as we want to say no. Families move together. Everybody wants their kids to move in, their families to move in. It's happening all over. So I'm meeting with architects all the time on.
Not everybody wants their kids.
Today, I had 2 architects meet with me on this. It's a big.
87 days to my daughter's wedding, but
Say that now, watch, you'll see.
But Dave, you could
David, I can.
tighten that, that ordinance as well.
Yeah.
We'll certainly look at that.
Dave, I think,
And then you're
Scott, you and Carl being diligent on that though is so important. Because those 2 families that become 3 families and 4 families, it's just, first of all, it's dangerous, right? You have people living in the basement.
one way out.
I had a bed right next to a boiler.
I mean, so those things, so they're really life and safety issues. So
Diane helped me on one of the most interesting ones I've ever worked on since I've been here. We do an inspection. Carl red flags it. It's on Coinman Avenue. It's a beautiful house. It's a two-family, Carl says. You can't find any permit, can't find any paperwork, no COs, nothing. We say you have to rip it out. So this person has these records
From 1924.
issued from the commissioners to build this house to a two-family.
Giving her
She has more records than us.
tax records going back to 19.
The best cleanest file I could ever have. I had to accept it. Diane looked at it. But apparently the commissioners issued a permit to make a one-family a two-family back in like 1950 or something. It was the funniest thing. It was the neatest paperwork and.
The handwriting and the actual architectural plans showing it was a two-family.
Which they had and we didn't even have.
So was she able to keep it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
The only house on Coinman that's a two-family.
Yeah.
And you never know it because it was built as they wrote in handwriting. It's built to look like a one-family house. That was like right here.
I'll just tell you our policy real quick, if it ever comes to the commissioners. We get an application for a resale. We schedule the inspection. The inspector goes out. He evaluates the property. He looks for all the things that are, out of the ordinary. He goes back to the office. He looks for something. If there's a permit, we have to let him keep it. If there's no permit, we tell him, get rid of it.
One of the problems that we see when people come in from the zoning board and say, well, I've had this and I've been paying taxes on it. It's the reevaluations where they go in, I guess it's Commissioner Evans, you would know this better than me. Get a company, outside company. We try to tell people, they're just counting how many bathrooms and they're counting how many kitchens. They're not looking to see whether it's allowed. They're just making sure that you're paying for what you're using it for.
Right.
And I always feel like there's got to be some kind of notice to people with that if you've got if you put in an extra bathroom or you put in an extra kitchen, there's got to be something that people have to understand that, but that's how many times, right? That's their reason.
But don't they really understand?
Yeah, they all, but I've been paying taxes on this since 1995. Well,
We all understand you're not allowed to put in an extra bathroom without consent, and if you do.
without a permit, yeah.
You're going to face the consequences. of
Well,
that.
I have one
Doesn't stop
comment.
people from making the
I
argument.
have one comment related to that. No refunds.
No refunds.
But see,
The truth,
to Diane's point, we had a family, it was a legal two-family. They had it as a four-family. They lost the resale because the new buyers wanted the four-family. We had to break their hearts and say, no sale because it's legal two-family.
Right, but they were.
And then they're blaming us, and they were taxed as a four-family.
Right, but
Yeah.
Every day I hear it.
I agree with your point is that to the extent somebody does something that is without permits, right? It may surface at some point, generally at the point of resale, right? And so if outside of a revaluation and that was there, well, they're not being assessed on that improvement.
right, if they don't get caught, they don't get caught.
So, but when you do get caught, right, you gotta pay. We have, every time with the reval, we always come up with people who have done things that get caught. And they look at their new tax bill and they go, holy crap, right? Because now they're subject to, the increased tax. And under the law, we're able to go back 2 years if we wanted to. So, which we don't, we go forward. So it's just, to me, it's the luck of the draw. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Well, you can't be rewarded for breaking the law. So, you got caught on your taxes, okay, got caught on your taxes. We could tell you to rip it out too at the same time.
Right, and you can save those
And
taxes.
when you go to sell it, you can't sell it as a four-family. That's your problem because you made it a four-family.
Right.
That shouldn't be a burden for the town. Carl's right, take it out. It's not permitted. You can't just let everybody do what they want. Great, but you can't.
Resales are not the only way we get a lot of complaints about illegal occupancy. Our residents are pretty smart. When they see something on the street, they see activity. 9 times out of 10, they call. You know, you're living on a normal residential street, you see your neighbor doing, you know, they call. They might not tell us who they are. You know, we get a lot of complaints from that.
I know that historically this has been a problem for this community and many others, where people start illegal use. I remember Patton Dolan telling me he would drive by, you get certain places where people would just do something illegal, drive by, spot whatever it was, go the next day, find the kitchen in the basement and the back and the bedroom in the basement, rip it out, go and check. It's gone. The following week, you go buy the lights on in the basement. Guess what they have? Another bedroom and another, kitchen. So he'd say, I have to go back almost every month to rip it out. And these folks do it because they can get, they figure they'll get away with it.
Okay, when you have time, we'll go sit talk, because I can tell you about some of the things that are going on with all of the houses and what people are making offices and then they're using them as bedrooms, because the whole trend of people working from home, they need that extra office space. And I've seen it a lot. And throughout the pandemic, we had so many realtors that just became realtors online and didn't really learn all the laws and all the necessary things that you have to do to comply for COs and everything else. So I think we're getting a ripple effect. We didn't know it was a big deal.
We have a term in our code department. I did a COVID bathroom. I swear.
Yeah.
I did a COVID bathroom. Our girls know it. They're saying they did a COVID bathroom. That's a bathroom that they did without a permit because they thought we were closed. We were open every day. We were always open, and our inspector inspected every day.
So there's a person with COVID.
COVID bathroom.
You know, the illegal basement apartments it's impacting the school district. Because they're saying they're living at this house. And I know kids that went for the Christmas club. And I said, you can't give them anything. They're living in an illegal basement apartment. And I know that for a fact. But they're addressed at that address, going to school in an illegal basement apartment in a single family house. So I know a while ago, we were getting a lot of complaints by Reinheimer Park, not to be too specific.
Yeah.
About how many people can live in a one family house.
Yeah.
There was cars parked in the back, on the front, all that stuff. Have we made any headway of that?
There's not a requirement or law that has an occupancy on a one family house, because basically you have to live in a sleeping room. You have to live in a bedroom. You can't sleep in basements. You can't sleep in kitchen. So, you can't say I have an occupancy for a one family house, because I built a 10,000 square foot house one day. Some houses in Nutley, like we see, sometimes I get plans for a normal one family house and there's 6 bedrooms. You drive by, it does not look like 6 bedrooms, it's 6 bedrooms, normal standard house. So there's never going to be an occupancy limit on a one family house. I think that you just have to be a proactive code department, and when you have these complaints, you have to try to enforce people sleeping in basements and in illegal spots.
But that the controlling number would be the amount of bedrooms.
Not
Some limiting, there's gotta be some limiting factor, and if it's.
You get people to sleep in one bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we all know the world we live in. People sleep in living rooms, and come on, grandma comes, she sleeps downstairs. It is what it is. This stuff happens. I'll tell you that our problems they're with our 2 families, right? they're.
From a Board of Ed perspective, everybody knows the challenges that we've been navigating the last, years. These are issues that, there's illegal apartments and kids are living in those illegal apartments, and, our end, we look at it as if they're living at an address that we have to school them. We have, and our superintendent Ken Bain is just, he had a prior meeting, but he'll talk more about this. But we have issues that we've noticed over the years where families are taking care of other family members, and they're having the kids live with them. So those are issues too. See.
That's a perfect segue. I was just going to ask the board members and Dr. Bennett and that anything that you would like to, to
Yeah,
make
no, I
us
think
aware of?
I think that's like the main focus on our end is we're navigating through these challenges that we have been facing. We're investigating a lot of different options and things that, we can do. Obviously one of the outcomes is expansion at some point. I think we've reached an area where, we don't have any classrooms that are available. The state mandates a lot of different things every year, things that we have to address. We just can't say no. And then there's things that pop up, like we had the opportunity this last year to apply for a grant and funding from the state for a pre-K program. The state has a requirement that they had a 20% free and reduced lunch requirement that we would never qualify for because we're not at that number. They lowered that number to 10%. We as a board looked at it and said, this is an opportunity for us to get funding for this pre-K program, which Ken can speak more about this, but this is pre-K is on the horizon. It's something that's going to be mandated in the next few years from the state. So we took the opportunity as a board to say we can get, if we get approved, we get funding at dollar for dollar. So we're at that point where we were approved and now making plans to incorporate this pre-K program into our system. Ken can talk more about this.
Pre-K is one of the initiatives we're going through. That's where I was. I'm sorry for being late, but I was listening to the Norfolk Middle School PTO. We're listening to ideas and talking to stakeholders about, our space and one of the things that impacts our space a lot, especially post-pandemic, is our special ed numbers continue to rise in district. With that comes challenges, program challenges, needing more space, needing more teachers. But we're doing it. We're going through the process. Preschool is a great initiative. It adds to the district-wide vision we all have, restructuring the district, making sure Nutley's one of the best educational places around. We started, we were approved for the grant. The application we awarded in September. We're expected to be operational in October. We were 4 classrooms and 60 students. Since then, we've expanded to 9 classrooms for next year, working with some providers in town, which we're happy to work with. So we're allowed to use preschools, funnel money to them to operate full-day, high-quality pre-K, which we're excited to do. Our need is great. We have about 400 students who have put in for it for next year. We have 135 seats at this point. So we're continuing to look at all options for expanding that. But that is not causing the space problem, that's contributing to it. But we've had this problem for a while.
Any solution down the road?
Well, I will say this board and working with the town commissioners, we appreciate that. We are exploring many options. All ideas are on the table. We have some great ideas that we're working through. We're hopeful that we'll be able to move forward.
And as Ken mentioned before, this is some of the things we're looking at is just we're looking at our pre-K to 12 program and coming up with a vision that's going to better our district. So that's taking this to try. Like I said before, at some point, I'm sure we're going to talk about some type of expansion because I think we've reached the limit as far as the available classrooms. We had our architect go in and look at every single building and look at every classroom and the use and they marked it red and green and everything was red except for maybe 1 or 2 classrooms where they were able to shift something. So it's a good thing as far as we have a growing school district. So it's good in that way. But there's challenges that this board is prepared to address, and we're going to hopefully with the help of the commissioners, we're going to be able to come up with a solution that's going to put us into many decades to come.
We'll continue to be creative. We moved the board office from the basement of the middle school to the Valley Bank. Doing that allows us to open 2 wonderful preschool classrooms that are working. So we continue to think like that.
Great.
I just want to point out that this is great that we're all here, all the boards tonight, but the board of commissioners that they have been with us, working with us every step of the way, and so we have a great relationship with them. We appreciate the relationship and everything that they do for us, and we continue to work with them.
It's always good to hear, and it really is very demonstrative of Nutley where It has been that way. Mayor?
Madam Chair, I just want to take this opportunity on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. Just thank our boards and all the volunteers from the school board, planning board, zoning. We appreciate all the time that you guys put in, wait for your families for the good of the community. So, I know I speak on behalf of all of us when I say thank you to our professionals who go beyond the call of duty on a daily basis. We appreciate you and, of course, our employees and all the good work that they do. So, any of my other commissioners who are here like to add in, but we really do appreciate everything that happens. And this is a unique meeting. I agree with Mr. Kazira. I don't know of any other municipality that does this, but I can tell you, it's a great idea because it's good to have all these people in one spot, at least for one meeting.
I just like to add to that too, and I'd like to thank the mayor for bringing that up. I think that what everybody does and joining in and, Nutley is a very, very special place to all of us. And I think that we recognize what's going on in the world today. Things are changing, and I think together we could preserve what we have here. Because as you look at our surroundings, things are changing dramatically. So with the help of all you good people and keeping us together, I think that the most important thing to do is keep Nutley what it has always been to all of us, a really special place, and preserve what we have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there anything anyone else would like to add?
Commissioner Evans.
Yes, Commissioner?
Just, I won't repeat what my commissioners and mayor said, because I believe that, we all chip in, we all work very hard. And you don't accomplish what we accomplish simply by showing up at a meeting twice a month. There's the work that goes to that to be prepared, and all the work that the school board goes to address the critical natures of the issues that we have to deal with. I think from my side, though, one of the things that I stress all the time is the whole concept of affordability, right? And whatever we're doing, we have to keep in mind that as a community, as a board, we represent the commissioners. We represent over 9,100 taxpayers in Nutley. As both of the zoning and planning boards, you are representatives of the community, that we're responsible for. And same thing with the school board and for the children of our town. But we have to continue to work in a coordinated way, because if we don't, the consequence of that is irreversible and threatening to the long-term viability of the community. We just have to continue to find a way to squeak things out. I just picked up a newspaper in South Jersey, and one of the towns down there is boasting a 9.7% increase in their taxes. 9.7%, over $9 million, right? And they're touting that's how good that feels, right? Here we would be railroaded out of town, right? So, and the reason the cooperation is important is because if the municipality succeeds, but the school board doesn't, the taxpayer doesn't care whose pocket it's coming out of. It's just a tax bill to them. So we have to continue to find ways to manage our way through the many difficult issues, which are enormous, that we face, and as we go forward.
Commissioner Kelly.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo the sentiments of all my fellow commissioners. I think what you guys said was very well said. I think it's important that we have this meeting. That way we can all ensure that we're on the same page, and make sure that we're on the same page so that the town grows in the way that we want it to grow and develops in the way that we want it to develop and stays the way that we want it to stay. And so I think it's important that we have this meeting, and it's great that we're unique in this area. But I do want to thank everyone for their service, all the boards, the professionals, our employees, because without you, this town would definitely be not where it is today for sure. And we live in a great town because of all your dedicated service. So thank you.
I'd just like to add that Commissioner Tucci is under the weather
Yes,
and has been for a couple of days, so we all pray for his speedy recovery.
yes. Anything else from the commission?
So we're good.
Okay, anything else from the planning board? Anything else from the zoning board? Anything else from the board of ed? Anything else from our professional?
I just want to just, if we can get this done by the end of the year, I'd be more appreciative to Dave and myself, because every single day we're going through this, getting complaints, going in people's houses, finding problems, and we just need to address it as soon as possible.
Thank you, we'll certainly try to do. And on a very positive note, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. As always,
Anybody from the public want to speak?
yes, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Mrs. Evans?
I'm the only one here from the public, and it's not really public. When I saw that this was going to happen, I notified my fellow committee members, the Historic Preservation Committee. And I said that I would come to the meeting to see what was going on, to see what, because of things like this really affect us, you know, when we're deliberating things about historic places, we need to know this thing. But I personally, this past weekend, my daughter was up from Florida with my granddaughter and great grandsons, and they stayed at a Airbnb on Albany Avenue, right across from the right across from Public Works practically. And I was really surprised. They originally were going to be an Airbnb in Belleville on Moore Place. I don't know what Belleville has on their books as far as Airbnbs are concerned, but this is the one that my daughter ended up at.
In the basement, in an illegal basement apartment.
Yes,
okay?
yes,
With no egress window, no carbon monoxide detector, no smoke detector.
yes, and the shower curtain fell down on them too.
Wait, should I have her number for a witness?
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Evans. There's nothing else to come before any of the board. I will declare this meeting adjourned, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know.